I'm Robert McCready at Evening Magic on Twitter. Rachel Custer is a poet from Indiana. She's won a Rattle Prize, an NEA grant, and has been published in many journals, including Rattle, The Journal, Body, the American Journal of Poetry, The New Yorker, to name a few. She is a mom, a former social worker, a realist, a critic, an Anabaptist, a quick responder to emails, my friend, and mutual follower on Twitter. Thank you, Rachel Custer.
Hi, Robert.
Hey, I am having a Roy Rogers this evening.
Okay, what is a Roy Rogers? Because
It,
I
it is
don't
a
know.
non-alcoholic drink made with grenadine, Coca-Cola, and a cherry. But
Oh,
this is
okay.
not a maraschino cherry, or not a traditional one.
So it's a cherry Coke, basically.
It's a cherry Coke, yeah. It has you want to
Okay.
get these because the bright red ones are
Oh, the
used from a
beans.
crushed up beetle.
That's you. They're what?
The bright red of a
Yeah,
maraschino cherry is
maraschino.
from a crushed up beetle.
Really?
Yeah, they're not kosher.
Okay, yeah. I like them though. I'm still gonna eat them.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Diet A&W root beer. It's classy.
And where are you zooming us from?
I am zooming from my room.
In Indiana?
Yes, Indiana. I thought you mean like so you mean like where in the country. Well, you said I'm from Indiana, so yeah, I'm here.
Do you care to give the town on Zoom?
Well, I live in Albion, so it's a little blip in the road on in northern Indiana. So I'm clear up northeast. So
Northeast. And what's the nearest town near there?
that people would have heard of. Fort Wayne is about an hour away. Indianapolis is about 3 hours away south. So that's about the only two towns in Indiana that anybody's heard of.
Is your town the inspiration for your poems?
Yes. My town in the area that I grew up in. I actually grew up in the suburbs of Albion. No, I grew up in very rural area out in the country. And now that I'm older, after I went away and went to college and all that, we've moved back here, but lived in the small town of Albion, and it definitely bleeds its way into my poems repeatedly. So
Is there a downtown in your town?
no, I mean there is. It's all downtown. Like it's not. It's kind of like one highway that runs through it, and it's on both sides. So yeah, there either is not a downtown or it all is downtown. There's not a lot here.
I'm thinking about that one poem where you said, I live in a town where there is no downtown.
You mentioned that. Do you know which poem it is?
I don't. It might be from Temple She Became.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah. Well, where I sometimes write the town that I write about is sometimes where I live, and then it's sometimes where I grew up, where I went to school, which is the same, very similar, very small town. But it really doesn't have one. I mean, not in the sense of like people think of there's stuff to do, you know.
Okay. Um, so I just read your book, Sally, Flatback Sally Country.
Yes. How'd you like
Who,
it?
what'd you say?
How'd you like it?
I enjoyed it. I thought that it was fun.
Oh, good. You
And
thought it was
it reminded me of my town, Florence, South Carolina. Who is Flatback Sally?
in my mind. So she's not a real. I mean, she kind of is a real person. She could exist, right? So she could be a person, um, but she's really just kind of a woman who's doing her best and been down on her luck a little bit. She kind of gets around and she's breaks all the rules, but she's good-hearted.
She's down on her luck and down on her back.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. That's kind of how she deals with things.
And she has a daughter named Mercy.
Mercy, yeah.
And these characters travel through the whole book.
Yes. So I have a friend who, well, I have more than one friend, but a best friend who got pregnant when she was 15. And so, and I have more than one friend who got pregnant when they were younger. And so that influenced my writing a lot too, as far as just what it's like to deal with that situation. That happens a lot where we're from. And it kind of just, that kind of influenced my idea of her having the daughter, and Mercy kind of going through life with her, you know.
Is Flatback Sally bisexual?
Not in my head, although I don't, it's, I didn't really think of it that way. Why do you ask? Is there a particular poem that made you wonder that?
Yes, in part two, I think it was part two, the speaker washes someone's feet.
Okay. So there are poems in the book that are more me, but also her. So there's a lot of my experience in her as well. And so probably the speaker in that poem is closer to my experience, but it's interesting that you read that into it. I can see how you would read that now, because obviously that I have a partner who's a female, so I get how you would look into that. You're a close reader.
Well, my pleasure. These were very enjoyable, and I didn't it seemed almost like Faulkner. We were getting in the heads of many different people, and
Yeah,
Sally was showing up.
yeah. And so one of those heads is probably mine, kind of. You know how that works, where you write about you, but you're not writing about you. So that's probably where that came in. I think Sally's kind of a equal opportunity employer. You know, like she kind of gets around.
Anything goes.
Anything goes. Yeah, it's how, although she wouldn't, like, she doesn't feel good about it.
Yeah, she's nuanced. She still is worried about her eternal soul. And uh,
Yes.
did Mercy die in one of the poems?
Mercy, which poem are you thinking? Let me look.
There was a line about an axe separating
Oh,
Mercy.
so Mercy, what in the poem, I think I know what you're talking about, axe blade that felled her. Mercy was the axe blade. So kind of the thing that brought Sally down to earth, you know what I mean? That the thing that broke her, but in the same instance made her. So if that makes sense. It's so interesting to talk to a fiction writer, because poetry is kind of like, the book is kind of narrative, but not, once you put it all together. So it's interesting to, because I would assume that you probably are more reading for narrative. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Does that make sense?
I looked at it as one thing because it's in one book, and I read it
Right.
in 2 days. I would have read it in one day had I not had to go to work and walk my dog.
That's so.
So I could tell they went together, and it's called Flatback Sally Country. So it's kind of her book.
Right.
And I like that she ran through it a little bit like Olive Kittredge.
Yeah.
And then I knew that X, I didn't know if it was a metaphor,
Yeah.
or if Sally, killed her daughter to
No,
escape.
it's a metaphor, but I think the layers are there. I hope that the layers are there. You know, I always want people to kind of borderline wonder if something horrible happened.
The layers are definitely there. I sent 2 of your poems to my friend Libby Wiersema. She's a
Okay.
poet. and she got published recently in a journal. I can't remember it. It might have something to do with Kansas. And when I sent her settlement, she wrote
Mm.
back, let me see, I've got the exact quote right here. Lord, this is a higher level of poetry craft. I need to read this shit.
That's so kind. Thank you. Thank her for me.
I will. And Settlement is an amazing, amazing town to read about because it's so similar to mine. And I think that outside of New York City and Los Angeles and
Mhm.
Portland and some of the other cities, everything else is,
Yeah.
I mean, the same stores. You have a Firehouse Subs, you've got a Walmart, you've got a Batteries Plus. I know
Yeah.
that because those are in all of our little towns. And
Yeah.
I reuse Walmart bags. I take my dog and I scoop her stuff with them. Um,
We all reuse our Walmart bags.
would you be willing to read that poem?
I sure will.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Settlement. This town like a raised fist, the clench of it, the industrial sulfur stench of it. Soundtrack running behind a poet dying early. Chinese finger trap town, this downtown, a nightmare of pulling. This town that eats its own. This town where everybody eventually ends up, pretending to be purgatory town, but what is the difference between burning away the sin of a soul and burning a soul for sin? Simply eternity? Eternal town, each moment like a day of panic blood, the iced frontier of afraid veins. Vein collapsing vacuum of a town. Mythic boredom town. Town in which the most interesting thing is the roads that lead away. Town waiting at the bottom of everything. Only 54 minutes north of a city town, then left at the post office. This movie poster of a man's shadow standing over a girl town. This silent picture town. Town where nobody becomes anything. Town where everyone becomes something in the mouths of everyone else. Everlasting gobstopper town. If you were a person, you'd be a bully town. If a god, you'd be silent. If you were a movie scene, you'd be that one with the idiot kid rapturous over a bag in the wind. We all reuse our Walmart bags town. We all reuse our lovers town. We all kindly refuse your assistance town. We all stand on the courthouse lawn and release balloons town where we never receive letters back. Town where if you're from this town, you'll never be a New Yorker town. And if you leave for New York, you'll forever lose this town. Hometown team town, covered cage of a town, where everything happened and keeps happening. Drone of a beehive town relaxing you to sleep. Town that promises to love you as long as you stay, licking pretend honey from your lips. I use the
I
word town a lot in them. I just realized.
well, that's what makes a poem. You can have repetition. I actually just got the gobstopper reference. I was thinking about that. You're never anything except in the mouths of other people, everlasting
Mhm.
gobstopper town, because it's a different flavor all the time.
Right, right. I
I
think I was obviously not feeling where I'm from when I wrote that. I was a little dark when I wrote that one, but that's all right.
I think there's a great empathy to it. I think it seems dark, but there are like the releasing the balloons,
Hmm.
reusing the Walmart bags. These are simple things, and maybe they seem sad.
There are moments of mercy.
I like the pop culture references to American
Yeah.
Beauty.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Which I thought I didn't realize I forgot that I had put that in there until I just now read it, but I thought that was the dumbest part of a movie. It was the dumbest thing. So obviously it stuck with me because that's one of the few pop culture references you'll find in my work probably, but it definitely stuck in my mind.
Seth MacFarlane also put the paper bag scene in an episode of Family Guy.
Really, I'm not surprised. The spoof. I love Family Guy. At least I did when it was funny. It's kind of it's kind of become like The Simpsons now, like the never ending, you know what I mean? Like they just keep kind of going more and more absurd to try to get you to laugh. But
I've heard that Seth doesn't actually do the show anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe AI is going to do it shortly.
Right. AI does everything now.
Who, what movie was The Shadow Standing Over the Girl?
I don't know that that was a specific movie, but I'm always drawn. Well, I'm always writing about women in peril, obviously. That's my kind of obsessive theme. And so I'm always thinking of, like, you see these movie posters where there's a shadow falling on the woman. You know what I mean? And so that's where what I was thinking of. I don't know if there was a specific movie, so.
You said that you're always writing women in peril.
Mhm.
I definitely noticed the femininity of your
Yeah,
poems. They're it's because it's unusual, it's shocking to see what true femininity is. You know,
that's interesting.
like the one poem about it started off happy. So
It started off, didn't end that way, but it started off that way, huh?
it was a field,
Oh,
summer
okay.
day, like a held breath, like held words in a woman's mouth, like a woman's mouth stopped by a chafed palm.
Yeah.
That was feminine, like a
Mm,
woman holding her tongue to
mhm.
ease around the man that is grumpy after work.
Right, right. I think a lot of the women's lives that I write revolve around the men who sometimes can be harmful. So like I said, I write women in peril a lot, and a lot of the time they're in peril because of the men in their lives. That's just a reality of life here, like it is in so many places sometimes. So,
That's why I call you a realist in the bio. There's so many other
mhm.
women who purport to be writers or are singing the words that a man wrote, and it's not really based in the reality of a woman's situation
Right,
where she can be vulnerable. And I think if
right.
these people were teaching other women how to behave in a new place, in a dangerous place,
Mhm.
women would not be served well to have only heard these things. And I think that
Right.
you are bringing the work to the table of true femininity and vulnerability and the nuances of being a woman and how to exist as a woman. And I
I
think only
so
one,
appreciate that.
I think it's the truth. And there's only one other person who's doing it,
Who's that?
Lana Del Rey.
Lindsay? Lana Oh, I've heard of her work too. I haven't read a lot of it, but I've heard of it. I'll look her up.
Well, she's a singer.
Oh,
She does write poetry though.
I thought so.
Yeah. And I think there was a rumor that she had a novel that was stolen because she said that her car got robbed in the middle of the day on Rodeo Drive, and they stole my novel.
Her
And
novel was in her car.
maybe it was on her laptop.
She was writing it longhand? Is that what?
I think it was on her laptop, and
Oh, that makes more sense.
but it might just be hype. But
Yeah. She's got a ghostwriter all day long.
her her songs are about real femininity
Mhm.
and vulnerability, and revolving around a man, kind of dodging him at times
Mhm.
if she's also in peril. Whereas a lot of people like Beyonce or Lady Gaga are writing this, I don't need a man, I'm perfect the way I
Right.
am, or I'm so sad, how come a man won't love me?
Yeah.
And it's
It's
not
kind of
quite
that those two extremes. Yeah.
it.
I
And you hit the
I like
note better.
Thank you. I want to be the Roseanne of poetry. You know, I want to be the one that tells the ugly truth. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she was strong. She was a strong woman, but she also needed her man, and at times, maybe got hurt by her man. So that's who I aim to be in this poetry game is Roseanne Barr, Roseanne in the show.
I have the same birthday as Roseanne.
You do?
Mhm.
That's so cool. She got canceled too, though. So
Well, Speaking of cancellation, a Twitter cancellation, in April, you quote tweeted, "What was your biggest Twitter controversy?" And you wrote, "I won an award." My
Yeah, the
question
NEA.
is, my question is, which time, which award caused the most controversy?
The NEA was the one that people were so furious when I won the NEA, um and they I think the biggest thing that they asked was how, how did she win an NEA? And I didn't fully understand the question, unless they believe that it's entirely gate kept. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean how? Like, I sent stuff in like everybody else, and they picked my stuff. I mean, that's so I'm so kind of out of the loop as far as the gatekeeping POBIZ kind of stuff goes, that I just kind of, I mean, I was excited because we needed the money. So, but that was when I left or left Twitter, because it was really bad. It was, people were saying horrible things. I got like rejected as dung beetle shit or something. I mean, people were just being horrible. So I left for a while before I came back. So
You trended on Twitter and you were not even on Twitter after that NEA.
I know. I know. I still watched, I still watched. I had to watch because it's like a car wreck. You can't always look away, and it was not good for me to see those things about myself, but I had friends who were there, kind of supporting me through it, because it was kind of a stressful time. So
I remember it was a Saturday when I noticed it, and I went to Taco Bell. And that is when, I'm not sure when I first discovered you. Maybe it was that. I discovered you after you got published in the journal,
oh yeah.
and that caused you trended on Twitter then.
Yeah. It's I've trended a couple times. It's not I don't like it. I don't like being talked about. You know what I mean? And I didn't fully understand when I first went onto Twitter what Twitter was or how it worked. So I thought, I thought subtweeting was rude, and I didn't think it was something that people should do, because it was like talking behind somebody's back. So if I had something to say, I would just say it to somebody, But then people got irritated with that because I said it to the wrong people, I guess, and so that wasn't the way that it was supposed to be. I always just thought it was more respectful to say something straight to somebody. That's not how Twitter works, though.
What was amazing about the NEA was someone who had dragged you.
Gave it to me.
Right. Explain that.
Um, you know, when I won the NEA, they said that I didn't know who the judge was until they called and told me that I had won it. And you're right, he had mentioned me, and he has like a huge following. So it was so horrible when he mentioned me in a derisive way, because it just fed into that stuff. You know what I mean? So much. And you just think of all these people reading it, and your gut I don't know, it was hard. And then when he gave it to me, they said that it was because of the kindness in my poems. And that meant a lot to me, because I try to write empathy and kindness into my work. But I think that stuff comes back around, and that's all I really can say about it. I mean, I appreciated that when he saw the work, rather than seeing me, that he saw what was in the work, and that I appreciate. So, because that's the thing I always say to people is, I only care about the work. I only ever cared about the work. I don't, the Twitter pile-ons and stuff. I hate that stuff. So I was just appreciative when he read the work, that he saw something in it, because I do respect his poetry. he has, I mean, he's a great writer. So
I thought it was blind, the NEA.
yeah, it is. So that's what made me feel good about it, because I don't think he would have picked me otherwise, obviously. So, um, I know, because I know there are places that still read blind, and I prefer them because I have more of a chance of getting past the censors.
What did he think? And I can't remember his name. What did he think when he found out who he gave the award to?
um, he wrote a tweet about that, like sometimes racists get awards, and that's that's how it works, and but that's about all he ever said about it. I don't know what he thought. um Denez is his name, Smith. And I don't know what his feelings were on the matter, but I appreciated it from him. So, and I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it, I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed the kind of karmic retribution of it.
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord,
Right.
which is something that I tend to forget. And I
Yeah,
feel like if I was a little bit more Rachel Custer, then I would probably be a little bit further in life.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure I'm very far.
Let's see. How do you write a poem?
I dissociate, I think. Mostly it just I get my computer out and I start with one line, and then I kind of just zone out. And I know that that's not really always the most helpful for people who are hearing, like, what's your process? My process is kind of like zoning out and just writing. It I'm not very disciplined, as far as, like you said, you write every day. I'm terrible at that. Unless I have a specific thing going, like for National Poetry Writing Month, I tried to write 30 poems in 30 days. Um, but other than that, I'm really bad, and I only write when I feel like it. And I don't always feel like it.
How often do you feel like it?
Um, it comes and goes. There have been times when I would go a couple months without writing. I would say after that I start to get antsy. It's hard for me. It's Even though I guess I said I when I feel like it, but I always feel like I should be writing. You know what I mean? Um, like I never feel comfortable in not writing. But I don't always feel like I can write, or like I have something to say. So sometimes I just have to I try to tell myself, all the things we tell ourselves, you have to let the well refill, yada yada. But I never feel great about not writing.
When you disassociate, are you channeling or
I feel like that's a good verb for it. I hate the spiritual implications of it. Um, so I do feel like that's kind of a good way to say it. Like, it kind of the creativity just flowing through you. But I don't like the idea of channel, like an entity. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say that I'm channeling an entity or something, but it does almost feel like it's being given rather than I'm creating it. You know what I mean?
is it the same thing as flow state?
From what I've heard of that, yeah, I would say kind of you just get into the zone and go. One of the things that I saw, have you ever seen the Disney movie Inside Out?
Yes.
Is that the one? No, that's not the one.
That's what the
There's
people
one
in the
about,
head.
yes, that's not it. There's one about a jazz musician. Um, and I forget which one it is, but there's a part where there's like a place where people get into the zone and they kind of go onto a different astral plane. Well, I don't, obviously that's not spiritually, I don't believe that either, but it kind of is true about creativity, where you just kind of get into this state where it feels really good and you're just almost like a creative high. I'm sure you know that as a writer.
I do. I think I think I might have channeled before in writing. I I try to now write a little bit more about my life because it seems, at least it's real, and I know that it's coming from me and not an entity.
Right.
Um, how do you go from your flow written poem to the finished product?
To be honest, I don't do a whole lot of editing. Once I write, it's kind of I edit as I write, and then I will check. Like I'll do sometimes some editing as far as form or breaking lines and stuff. But usually, I guess the way I edit is I write bad poems until I write the poem that I need to write. You know what I mean? So it's like I might write a poem that doesn't work at all and it won't see the light of day. And I might write however many poems it takes to get to, and then I write the poem that I need to, that I've been trying to say. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much done. I mean, that's just kind of my process. It comes out and that's how it is. I am not very patient, I guess, with the process of editing.
When you won the AWP mentorship, how did that improve your poems?
Oh, that was so great. I got to work with Karen McCadden as a mentor, and it, I think it just leveled them up a little bit. And also, she was able to introduce me to some other contemporary poets that really like reading poetry has always been what kind of levels up my work. So that was a big way that it helped.
Who is your favorite poet?
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. That's awful to do to me. I'd have to say maybe Franz Wright. Um, I would guess that would be, and possibly Yehuda Amichai. I hope I'm saying that right. Um,
I
who
haven't
is
heard
just
of them.
brilliant. You haven't heard of Franz Wright even?
I probably, if you've tweeted him recently, I've seen it.
I haven't in a while, but you should read him. Read um, God's Silence or Walking to Martha's Vineyard. He's so good. So good.
Are those books or poems?
Books. Yeah, books. I'll send them to you. I'll send you a
Okay.
link to him.
All right, please.
He passed away not too long ago. He's the son of another famous poet, James Wright. Um, and just a brilliant, brilliant poet. Troubled, but brilliant. He was also like problematic, I guess. I think all the poets who tell the truth are problematic because the truth is problematic, you know?
Yes. What do you think the most problematic truth is today?
Jesus Christ, I think.
Meaning that he is the one true
That he's
God.
God. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that's always been the most problematic truth. Um, and it will remain that way, I think. So
Do you think other issues that society has had problems with have been proxies of Jesus Christ?
yeah, I do in some ways. Yeah. That's interesting and well observed. I think a lot of times some of the issues that people have with conservatives are because conservatives are more likely to be people of faith, or to believe things based on their, like for instance, pro-life, based on their faith, that are difficult for people to be okay with if they don't understand where it's coming from. You know what I mean? And so I do think that can be proxies, and the people who stand in for believers, who stand in for Christ in some ways, get the reaction that he would have gotten.
What did he say? They hated me first.
Mm-hmm. They'll hate you too. That's basically it.
I found once I gave up all of the open-mindedness to
Mm-hmm.
all of the other like truths,
Mm-hmm.
that there is only one truth. It makes sense for there to be only one truth.
Yeah.
Things got simpler in ways.
Yeah. I think it is simpler. It's, there are a lot of ideologies out there that people act like um, they take less faith, but in actuality, I think they end up taking more of a leap of faith than, like you say, the one truth does. You know what I mean? So it's like before we got on, you were talking about other gods. To believe in other gods, you have to take just as much of a leap of faith, if not more, to believe in one God, and so that's what I think is a lot of times people will act like their belief is objective truth, or that it makes more sense, and in reality they're taking as much of a leap of faith I think that about atheists a lot of times. It takes as much of a leap of faith to believe there is no God as it takes to believe there is a God.
On Twitter, you say you're an Anabaptist.
Yeah.
What is an Anabaptist?
The reason I put that on there, even though my dog's barking, but even though no one will probably know what, hey, shush. The reason that I put that on there, even though no one knows what an Anabaptist is and no one cares, is that I want people to understand there are kind of a set of stances that come with it. Especially in some, like, pacifism is one of the ways that, and kind of a skepticism of the state in a way. And I want people to know that I that's the kind of faith that I was raised with. And it's important to me that people know that I'm not an evangelical in the sense of the word that most people would think.
How does it differ?
Well, Anabaptist, my church that I came from, came kind of descended from the Mennonite church. It's not like we don't wear weird clothes and all that, but it there are a lot of beliefs that are the same as, like, you hear, like, about the Mennonite Quakers kind of thing, about resisting the state power when it's wrong. Um, you know, Pacifism is a big one, even though I'm kind of questionable at that sometimes. And so it's not huge. It's not a huge deal, but I just want people to see that as that's what I am, rather than evangelical, if that makes sense.
I'm a little bit confused about the word evangelical, I think.
Yeah, I probably am too, so that makes sense. Everybody here, so I think people assume, or maybe in my mind, people assume that if you're a conservative and a Christian, you're an evangelical or a fundamentalist, you know what I mean? And so I share most of the beliefs that evangelical Christians have. Um, it's just that the church that I was raised in, it is slightly different in history, if that makes sense, historically.
What historical fact is different in your church than what you think an evangelical church would believe?
Probably in a lot of the pacifist stance, because it's a church-wide stance of pacifism and kind of conscientious objector to the state. And so I don't always, now that's not to say that there aren't evangelicals who are pacifists, but the church, to have that stance as a church, I think is different.
Meaning there's nobody from your church that's going to join the army.
That's not necessarily, I mean, people do. People don't necessarily live out that, you know what I mean, that value, but as a church, it's traditionally that there may be more conscientious objectors to state sanctioned violence. Yeah.
And if the state were going to destroy your church wouldn't fight back.
That's hard to know. Actually, to be very honest, I don't have a church, like a specific church that I go to. This is just the church that I identify with, that I was raised in, the Church of the Brethren. probably would not fight back. That's at least that's the gold standard, right? That we're not supposed to. Now, I don't know, we're all human, so I don't know that would how well people would do that or live that out, but that would be the kind of the standard.
I was going to ask what a day in the life of Rachel Custer looked like. But
Oh
now
my
I know
god.
that you don't go to church. So what else does it look like?
Yeah, I don't go to church. We've had trouble kind of finding one where it's a fit. But like a regular day in the life, there's not a whole lot that goes on. I mean, I work from home. Um, and to be honest, I'm home a lot because I have severe agoraphobia. I don't know if you knew that.
I
Um,
didn't.
or no, do you know what agoraphobia is?
Fear of going outside into big
Yeah.
spaces.
So I stay home most of the time. Um, and I've been having a lot of struggles with that just recently or in the last year or so. I've had panic disorder my whole life, and so it's kind of been worse here lately. So that's a day in the life is, I mean, kind of, I write and I work from home. My daughter, we raise our daughter, and we're kind of homebodies and quiet, not a lot goes on.
What time do you get up in the morning?
Oh my gosh, early. I got up this morning at like 4. Normally though, usually about 6, and then I work. And I've been doing this interesting thing where I rate website searches or whatever from home. And it's so interesting. They have you like opt in if you can deal with adult whatever topics or whatever. And so it can be offensive sometimes because people search for all kinds of things. Well, of course, I always opt into the possible offensive ones, and I almost never get anything offensive. So I'm always wondering, like, what are they talking about? I'm always so curious. I'm probably going to end up getting something horrible, and then it's going to scar me for life. But that's kind of what I do most of the day is work.
And then do you cook dinner for the family?
Sometimes, sometimes, mostly I cook easy stuff. My partner sometimes cooks. We're pretty self-sufficient as far as, we kind of do the hunter-gatherer thing sometimes too.
Is it more of is one person more the homemaker and
Deb.
one
Yeah.
and you're the
Deb
homemaker?
definitely. No, Deb. Deb is definitely the homemaker. Yeah, and I'm definitely, I mean, more of the I don't want to say the guy, but
There's
that's
an old
terrible.
there's an old
But
Golden Girls joke, and Dorothy says, "And I take out the garbage."
mhm. It's so true though. I do all that stuff. So like, if the car needs jumped or if whatever that's what I do. I take care of that stuff, and the rest of the time I sit on the couch and eat potato chips. I'm so boring, honestly.
I don't think this is boring at all. It's interesting to see what it would be like to be Rachel Custer.
Oh my gosh.
So when you were going through the big Twitter battles,
Yeah.
how was your day interrupted?
Oh, it was awful. Well, the one time I don't know if you've ever read the article. Someone wrote an article about me.
The one that was
Um,
on the not Christian, conservative website that is now defunct. What was
there's
it? Weekly
one.
Standard?
There was one on was it the Weekly Standard or the National Review or something like that?
I
There
think
was
maybe it's Weekly Standard.
Yeah, Hannah Yost, I think her name was. But Clint Margrave also wrote one for Quillette. Um, but the worst thing was when it first started, my daughter was being treated for cancer, and so I was actually in the hospital with her when the Trump poem came out, and it was like an immediate, like a bomb had gone off and I just I didn't expect it at all. I didn't fully understand it, um and my daughter was being treated was getting chemo, and so it was horrible. It made me feel paranoid, like that everybody, you know what I mean, that I was blacklisted everywhere, that people were talking about me. And it was just hard, but I've kind of gotten into a better place about that now. If people, I mean, if people want to talk about me, I guess they're going to talk. There's nothing I can do about it, and I know what's true. You know what I mean? And I know God knows what's true. So I hate that there are people who think certain things about me or think that they know certain things about me that aren't so. Um, like that I'm racist or that I'm whatever, yada yada, that I'm mean or whatever. But I guess that's how life goes.
How's your daughter now?
She's good. She's been in remission for over 6 years, I think. So she's considered cured from leukemia. Praise God. Um, and she is doing great. She's almost 13. She's going to be 13 in October, which is just insane to me. She's she's going through all the things that a teenage girl goes through. So it's not always easy, but better.
Would you be willing to read the Donald Trump poem for us?
Yeah, I can. Let me see here. I have to read it off the line. Let's see. How I am like Donald Trump. Yesterday I said the thing I was trying to say perfectly to myself. I am something astounding. I am like the Grand Canyon, I said, by which I meant I sometimes feel hedged in by those who would sweat in hot cars for days just to stand and look at me. And people think I am saying I am a spectacle, a wonder, surrounded by nothing as huge as me. And people think I am claiming majesty. People travel for days to look at the most important canyon, which is to say, the biggest empty space. Sometimes I might as well kick pea gravel over the side rather than try to explain who I am and wait until I hear it hit the ground. What I am trying to say in small, hard words that always fall away from what I mean is I am not the canyon, the immense perfection of its depth. I am more the missing earth dispersed, trying to feel whole, to believe that God makes sometimes by taking away.
It seems that you're empathizing with Donald
Mhm.
Trump, but is it a positive?
No, it's not. It's not. And that's why I said I don't know if people can read because I actually I did set out to write a more positive poem because I talked to Tim Green and we were on some Facebook thread or something, and basically every poem. This was during the 2016 election, and every poem they had was like, "Hate Donald Trump. Donald Trump's a monster." Yada yada. And so I said, "What if I could write a positive poem about Donald Trump?" He's like, "Okay, well, send it to me." So I wrote that poem, and it wasn't. I don't think of it as a positive poem at all. Um, and but I think it was more positive in that it was empathic. You know what I mean? Like I think that was what made it different, was that it attempted to find empathy, and it was not even, if you read the poem carefully, it's not even about Donald Trump. You know what I mean? I mean, it's about me in a way. Um, and so, and how, I guess it kind of is, and how he's similar or whatever, but it's not a good poem, a positive poem about Donald Trump. Um, but some people really expressed horror that I would empathize or humanize Donald Trump. And so I guess I get that. I get what they're saying, but to me, it's always important to humanize. That's what makes good poetry.
I definitely I think that's a great poem. I see Donald Trump there, this American
Mhm.
icon with
Mhm.
next to an American monument,
Right.
and then I can kind of see him standing in the wind alone.
Mhm.
And
Empty, kind of.
right, and then I think when I first heard about the controversy with that poem, I thought, well, you certainly wouldn't say that she was writing a pro Donald Trump poem.
Right, right.
So
No, it was just the humanizing, I think, that people really took offense to. And there had already, I mean, I get it. It was a charged time. Everything was charged about that whole election. I just didn't expect it. And that's what it hit me like out of the blue. I had no, and that was one of the early poems that I published kind of online on a bigger venue. So it kind of also shocked me how much attention, how much good attention it got as well. Just the extent of it, it was wild to me. To have people talking about me that I didn't know is so weird. It's still weird.
Joyce Carol Oates has never written the word Trump on its own unless she's quoting something else. So she's definitely taken away all of the humanity that she can from him and just kind of views him as a one-dimensional person. This coming
Yeah.
from a woman who wrote a book titled Rape, a Love Story.
Yeah.
And now she's just one-dimensional.
I don't get it. I mean, I think that if somebody is dangerous, it's all the more important to understand their humanity. Because, and I don't necessarily know that I agree that he is dangerous, but if you believe that he is, and I assume that that's where she's coming from on that, it's all the more important to understand where that's coming from. You know what I mean? I think of like Hannah Arendt, who wrote about the banality of evil, and how evil is the person you can be when you're being your worst. When you know what I mean? It is the person all of us can be. And that's so important to know, because if you don't believe that any person can be evil, then you don't know where your line is. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It does. There's a lot of self-control involved and you have
Mm-hmm.
to practice it. I was just telling a friend the other day, we have feelings, and those feelings, I think I wrote this on Twitter today. Um, Someone said your urges are who you are. And I said, I used to think that, but I don't think so, because urges are imaginary, feelings are
Right.
imaginary, and we all have them. We
Mm-hmm.
are what we choose to do.
Yeah. I'd say your behavior is who you are. Because
Right.
everybody gets urges to do all kinds of stuff. That doesn't mean that they do it, and I think that's kind of a dangerous stance, honestly, I think, because people have urges all the time. I mean, you think about people who are up on a high building and all of a sudden have this insane urge, just jump off,
Or push someone.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that you're dead.
Right. But if you do push people off buildings, you're going to be known as a murderer. No one will want to stand next to you. And if you're
Right.
someone who is a caretaker, if you're someone
Mhm.
who went to social work school and has a daughter, you're going to say, I want to stand on the roof next to Rachel Custer, not next to someone who'll cancel another
Push me off.
person.
Although I'm not sure I want to stand next to someone who has a lot of urges to push people off either, just because they
This
they might
person,
eventually give in.
this person talks about all their horrible urges all the time, and they say that's who they are. I'm not standing next to them. Speaking of the Grand Canyon and Donald Trump is standing on a tall building, what is your greatest accomplishment?
My greatest accomplishment? Wow. I would say parenting my daughter. I think that's got to be it.
All right. Paul Leslie, who runs the Paul Leslie Hour, is a former radio show and now podcast, recommends turning over the last part of the show to the guest,
Oh my
letting the
god.
guest say whatever is on his or her mind for potentially the whole world to hear. And we're at
Okay.
that time, Rachel.
We are. You're
So
turning it over to me, huh?
I'm
Are you
turning it over to
nervous?
you to say what's ever on your heart or your mind, what you want people to know, knowing that everyone in the whole world might hear this.
Okay. Are you nervous?
I'm excited.
You're excited. I have to say, because it's what I firmly believe, is that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior of potentially everybody in the earth, and that people need to understand that as truth. That's the most important truth that I have to give.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for
Thank
joining me
you.
and talking.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.